The attack came without warning, a whisper in the pre-dawn darkness. At 3:42 a.m. on August 5, 2025, the digital age of warfare announced its arrival with terrifying force. 14 Russian-made suicide drones, flying just 6 feet above the waves of the Gulf of Aden, closed in on their target. They had launched from Russian territory, a silent swarm traversing thousands of miles undetected. Their low-altitude approach was a deliberate tactic, designed to slip beneath the sophisticated radar nets that form America's electronic shield. This was not a random act of aggression. It was a calculated, precise, and technologically audacious strike aimed at the heart of U.S. military power in the region. The drones were harbingers of a new conflict, one fought not with soldiers on a battlefield, but with algorithms and autonomous systems. The target was the Poseidon 6 offshore platform, located 119 nautical miles south of Yemen. To the public, it was presented as a civilian energy installation, a benign piece of infrastructure in a volatile sea lane. But its true identity was one of the Pentagon's most guarded secrets. Codenamed Switchpoint Prime, the platform was a critical logistics and data fusion hub. It was the central nervous system for a vast network of American military assets. The approaching drones were not merely targeting a structure. They were aiming to sever the operational arteries of 3 aircraft carrier strike groups, over 70 autonomous drones, and the flight corridors for America's most advanced stealth bombers. This was an attack on the very architecture of modern American warfare. The attribution came swiftly, leaving no room for doubt or plausible deniability. U.S. Cyber Command analysts, working frantically in secure facilities across the globe, traced the digital breadcrumbs back to their source. The drones were being controlled via Russia's highly secure Type 5 encryption network. This was the same proprietary system used at the Borisov 9 drone complex, a secretive military installation nestled near Astrakhan, Russia. The link was direct and irrefutable. Moscow had not just supplied the weapons, it had orchestrated the attack, holding the digital trigger from thousands of miles away. The evidence painted a chilling picture of state-sponsored aggression, executed with a level of precision that blurred the line between covert operation and an open act of war. In the final moments before impact, the platform's few human occupants were oblivious to the impending catastrophe. The attack was a symphony of destruction, ruthlessly efficient. The drones struck their designated targets with pinpoint accuracy, turning a symbol of American technological supremacy into a blazing inferno. The initial explosions killed 6 American engineers instantly, their lives extinguished before they could comprehend the assault. 11 others suffered severe burns as the attack ignited nearly 1 million gallons of JP-8 jet fuel. A fireball erupted over 100 feet into the sky, and the resulting shockwave registered as a magnitude 3.1 earthquake. It was a brutal, swift, and devastating opening salvo in a conflict that had just turned hot. The destruction of Poseidon 6 was more than a tactical loss. It was a strategic amputation. In just 5 minutes and 46 seconds, the Russian drones wiped out over $134 million in critical military systems. The financial cost, however, paled in comparison to the operational paralysis that followed. Among the first systems destroyed was the platform's encrypted satellite link tower. This single piece of hardware was the conduit for over 6,200 daily targeting updates to U.S. drones operating across the Middle East. With its destruction, unmanned assets flying missions over Yemen, Syria, and the Red Sea were suddenly flying blind. Their real-time intelligence feeds severed in an instant. The digital eyes and ears of American power in the region had been blinded and deafened. The platform's most vital function was its role as a forward refueling station. It housed the Cold Start Refueling Cell, a unique and indispensable system. This was the only forward-deployed installation in the world capable of conducting mid-air refueling for the B-21 Raider, America's newest and most advanced stealth bomber. The loss of this capability had immediate and cascading consequences. Within minutes of the attack, the Pentagon was forced to scrub 43 long-range sorties. These were not routine patrols. They included critical strike missions planned against hostile targets in Syria. The strategic reach of America's premier deep strike asset was suddenly and dramatically curtailed, its long arm shortened by thousands of miles. Perhaps the most alarming loss was the breach of Vault 3C. This secure vault contained prototype AI guidance chips, a $74 million investment in the future of autonomous warfare. These chips were designed for the next generation of hypersonic drones, representing a quantum leap in guidance and decision-making technology. The explosion and fire that consumed the platform compromised the vault's integrity. This triggered a code black emergency across the Pentagon's drone AI laboratories. The nightmare scenario was that at least one of these advanced chips could have survived the blast. If recovered by Russian forces, it would hand a generational technological advantage to a primary adversary, a catastrophic intelligence failure. The sum of these losses represented a strategic disaster not seen in decades. The attack was the first successful strike on a strategic U.S. logistics node since the attack on Pearl Harbor. For the first time in over 20 years, a foreign power had managed to sever America's classified combat communications while missions were underway, penetrating a network long considered to be impenetrable. The real-time combat telemetry between 3 aircraft carriers and 12 unmanned flight corridors was severed. The intricate web of data that allowed U.S. forces to dominate the modern battlespace was torn apart. The attack on Poseidon 6 demonstrated a terrifying new vulnerability at the core of America's military doctrine. The destruction of Poseidon 6 sent a psychological shockwave through the Pentagon and the White House. It was an attack not just on infrastructure, but on the very idea of American invincibility. For decades, U.S. military strategy has been built on a foundation of technological superiority and geographic security. The nation's core military assets were believed to be protected by layers of advanced defenses, operating from secure platforms far from any conventional threat. The low-cost, high-tech drone swarm shattered that illusion of safety. It demonstrated that even the most critical and secretive facilities were vulnerable to a determined adversary armed with relatively inexpensive and deniable technology. The shield had been pierced. The attack forced a painful reevaluation of strategic vulnerabilities. It was a digital Pearl Harbor, a wake-up call that underscored how the nature of warfare had fundamentally changed. The enemy was no longer necessarily a fleet of ships or a column of tanks, but a swarm of intelligent machines guided from a continent away. The incident highlighted a critical asymmetry. A multi-billion-dollar strategic platform had been neutralized by a handful of drones that likely cost a fraction of that amount. This new reality created deep anxiety within the defense establishment. How many other switch-point primes were there? And how could they be defended against an enemy that could strike with such precision from the shadows? The breach of a network previously believed to be impenetrable had a profound effect on morale and confidence. U.S. warfighters have long operated with the assurance that their communications are secure and their technological edge is absolute. The Russian attack undermined that core belief. It introduced an element of doubt into every command, every data link, and every mission. If Russia could sever communications for drone fleets over the Middle East, what other systems could they access or disrupt? This digital infiltration was a psychological weapon in its own right, sowing uncertainty and mistrust in the very systems designed to provide clarity and an operational advantage. It was a ghost in the machine that could not easily be exorcised. This new vulnerability also had significant geopolitical implications. The attack was a bold statement of Russian capability and intent. It signaled to the world that Russia was willing and able to challenge U.S. military dominance directly, using asymmetric tactics that exploited America's reliance on complex, interconnected technological systems. For allies of the United States, it raised uncomfortable questions about the reliability of American security guarantees. For adversaries, it provided a blueprint for how to confront a superpower. The strategic balance felt suddenly more fragile, the world a more dangerous and unpredictable place. The attack was a clear signal that the unipolar moment was over. The American response was not a matter of if, but when and how. In the days following the attack, the National Security Council convened in a series of tense, classified meetings. The evidence was undeniable, and the strategic damage was severe. The decision was made to authorize Operation Crimson Reprisal, a Tier 1 response under Directive 139B. This protocol, rarely invoked outside of nuclear contingencies, grants wide latitude for a swift and overwhelming military action. The order was clear and unambiguous. The United States would strike back, and it would do so with decisive force. The mission was placed under my command, Rear Admiral Rachel Keane of Carrier Strike Group 9. As a seasoned commander, I'm known for keeping calm under pressure. The objectives of Operation Crimson Reprisal were threefold and meticulously defined. The primary goal was to neutralize the point of origin, the Borisov 9 drone facility near Astrakhan, Russia. This meant not just damaging the facility, but utterly destroying its operational capability. The second objective was to eliminate Russia's advanced UAV infrastructure on site, ensuring that such an attack could not be easily repeated. Finally, the mission carried a crucial, high-stakes intelligence objective: to recover or, if necessary, destroy any compromised American technology, specifically the prototype AI chips from Vault 3C, which were presumed to be at or en route to the Borisov facility for analysis. The mobilization of assets was astonishingly rapid. Within 37 minutes of receiving the final authorization on October 17, 2025, a formidable strike package was airborne and underway. The tip of the spear consisted of two B-21 Raider stealth bombers, launched from the remote island base of Diego Garcia. Each bomber was armed with two 5,300-pound GBU-57C deep earth penetrator bombs. These are weapons designed specifically to destroy deeply buried and hardened targets. They would fly a clandestine route, designed to be invisible to Russian air defense systems. This was the B-21's first publicly acknowledged combat deployment, a clear signal of American resolve. Supporting the bombers was a multi-layered force: four F-35C Lightning, two stealth fighters lifted off from the deck of the USS Ronald Reagan, armed with long-range AGM-158B JASSM-ER cruise missiles, to eliminate surface targets and provide air cover. Simultaneously, the destroyers USS Thomas Hudner and USS Gridley launched a volley of 32 Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles. To clear the way, a screen of 18 MQ-25 Stingray drones was deployed. Their mission was to jam Russian communications, saturate their radar with decoys, and create a corridor of electronic silence through which the main strike force could pass undetected. It was, honestly, a complex and perfectly synchronized orchestra of military power, poised to deliver a devastating counterpunch. The counterattack began at 6:12 a.m. Russian time on October 17th. The target, the Borisov 9 drone facility, was no ordinary military base. It was a fortress, a symbol of Russia's investment in next-generation warfare, with its most critical components buried under 184 feet of solid granite and protected by 3 layers of reinforced concrete. It was designed to withstand a conventional, and perhaps even a tactical nuclear assault. Russian military planners believed it to be impregnable. They were about to be proven wrong. The American response was designed not just to damage, but to shatter that belief and the very foundations of the complex itself. The B-21 Raiders, flying under a complete cloak of electronic and radar invisibility, were the ghosts in the Russian machine. They slipped through the country's vaunted air defense network without raising a single alarm. They were specters on a mission, their sleek flying wing design rendering them virtually undetectable. At 6:17 a.m., flying high in the stratosphere above Astrakhan, the two bombers opened their weapons bays. 4 GBU-57C bunker buster bombs were released, beginning their silent, hypersonic descent toward the Earth. On the ground, the Russian operators at Borisov 9 had no indication of the annihilation that was seconds away. The first sign of the attack was the ground itself erupting. The impact was cataclysmic. The deep earth penetrators performed exactly as designed, piercing the layers of granite and concrete before detonating deep within the heart of the underground complex. The resulting explosion created a tremor that registered as a magnitude 3.6 earthquake, and a plume of smoke and debris billowed 1,200 feet into the morning sky. The core of the Borisov 9 facility was instantly vaporized. Simultaneously, the F-35Cs and Tomahawk cruise missiles executed their part of the mission with brutal efficiency. The F-35s jammed Russian targeting systems, blinding their response, while their JASSM-ER missiles rained down on the surface elements of the base, destroying 47 long-range UAVs and 9 encrypted AI analysis systems before they could be scrambled. The strike was over as quickly as it began. The American assets melted back into the electronic ether, leaving a scene of total devastation behind them. The primary objectives were achieved. The launch point of the attack on Poseidon 6 was neutralized, the on-site drone infrastructure was eliminated, and deep within the rubble of the underground bunker, any surviving American AI chips, along with Russia's own advanced research, were either recovered by covert teams or utterly destroyed, their secrets turned to dust. The response was a stunning demonstration of American stealth technology, precision strike capability, and the political will to use it. A message had been sent, written in fire and steel. Was the American response justified? From the perspective of the Pentagon and the White House, the answer was an unequivocal yes. The initial Russian attack was a direct and unprovoked act of war against a strategic U.S. military asset, resulting in the deaths of American personnel. It was a strike designed to cripple U.S. military operations and steal highly sensitive technology. Under any established international norm or law of armed conflict, a nation has the right to self-defense. Operation Crimson Reprisal was framed not as an escalation, but as a necessary and proportional response to restore deterrence and defend national interests. A failure to respond decisively would have been interpreted as weakness, inviting further aggression. However, the strike on Borisov 9 pushed the world into dangerous and uncharted territory. It marked the first time the United States had openly conducted a major military strike on the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation since the end of the Cold War. While the initial Russian attack was clandestine, the American response was overt and devastating, designed to be undeniable. This direct, kinetic exchange between two nuclear-armed superpowers created a precedent fraught with peril. It risked setting off an escalatory spiral that could be difficult, if not impossible, to control. Critics of the operation warned that while tactically successful, it could prove to be a strategic blunder, making future conflicts more, not less, likely. The incident starkly illuminates the evolving nature of modern warfare. The lines between peace, covert competition, and open conflict have become dangerously blurred. The development of advanced drones, cyber weapons, and AI-driven systems allows nations to project power and inflict significant damage with a degree of deniability that was previously impossible. Russia's development of weapons like the nuclear-armed Poseidon autonomous torpedo further complicates this new strategic landscape, mixing psychological warfare with tangible threats. This new domain of conflict lacks clear rules of engagement or established red lines, making miscalculation a constant and deadly threat. Both the attack and the counterattack showed that technology is rapidly outpacing diplomacy and doctrine. Ultimately, the strike on Borisov 9 serves as a watershed moment. It was a powerful demonstration that America's technological edge, particularly in stealth and precision strike, remains formidable. Yet it also underscored a fundamental truth. In this new era of digital warfare, there are no safe havens. The very technologies that grant a nation its strength also create its greatest vulnerabilities. The cycle of attack and reprisal between the US and Russia may have concluded for now, but it has opened a new chapter in military history. The world now waits, holding its breath to see what comes next, knowing that the next global conflict may not begin with a bang, but with a single line of code.